Thank you all for coming. We're so happy to host Tetrick again this year. I'm just going to do a short little intro and then going to let him get right into it. So Josh is a social entrepreneur, a writer, and a speaker. He's led a United Nations business initiative in Kenya, worked for both former President Clinton and the President of Liberia, and taught street children as a Fulbright scholar in Nigeria and South Africa. And I also know that he has a golden retriever named Jake. And
most important thing about me.
Yeah. And he enjoys finding alternatives to making eggs without using animals.
That's right. I have a partner in that endeavor too, I think. Here. There you go. There it is.
Which you will learn more about
throughout
this talk tonight. So let's welcome Tetrick.
Thanks, guys. All right, so about 6 months ago, I have this friend who's like a specialist in memory and brain science. And they told me about these things called Flashbulb Memories. And Flashbulb Memories are these memories that just grip us. These memories, maybe when we were 5 and cereal spilled all over our head, or when we were 13 and we asked a girl out and she said, absolutely not. These memories that just stick with us, that we cannot break away from. And when I think back to my life of the flashbulb memories that I have, one that absolutely sticks out, and Kelley kind of alluded to it, is when I adopted my dog Jake. My cute little baby golden retriever Jake, who I love so much. I remember the moment that I saw him. I remember the moment that I adopted him. And the flashbulb memory, other than Jake, that continues to grip me, that I think about at least once a week, is this flashbulb memory of my time at Cornell University. I was a junior, and I was hanging out with my friends on the 3rd floor of Cascadilla Hall. This was the dorm I lived the entire time I was there. And my friends and I used to hang out on the 3rd floor in the lounge all the time. And I would just chill there basically every single night and talk with them about politics, about drama, about the newest TV show, about relationships. But that one night in particular, we decided to get a little deep. We decided to go beyond the surface of politics and drama and relationships and really talk about who we are, about who we're going to be, about what we want to do with the rest of our lives in a deeper, more profound way. And it's a memory that continues to stick with me because I remember being so ridiculously confused because I didn't share the thoughts of anyone else on the couch. My friends who were there, Mike and Lauren and Amit, they were on the left side. And on the right side, my friends Pete and another Josh and my friend Vinny and Sean on the other side. And you had the guys over here who were very committed to living outside themselves. They wanted to make a difference in the world. Things like income inequality in Brazil and South Africa bothered them. The fact that women are trafficked on the streets every single day bothered them. The fact that there are little girls named Lauren who are being prostituted right now in some of the poorest places in the world bothered them. 1 billion people living under $1 a day bothered them, and they thought about committing their lives to it. They thought about how they could arrange their lives to make a difference, how they could work for nonprofit organizations, how they could give their life away to a cause. And I heard them, and to some extent, that resonated with me. I felt that in my heart. And on the other hand, my friends who looked at all those goody two-shoes people, and they were like, that's not me. I'm a business person. See, I want to work with McKinsey and Bain. I want to work with Goldman Sachs, big investment banks. I want to work with the big global corporations, General Electric and Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble, because I want to make money, because I want to focus on business, because I want to apply my marketing skills and finance and accounting. Mr. Accountant man over there. What's your name again? Matt? Matt. I might use Matt as an example throughout the speech. I'm not sure. I felt them too. Because the idea of using business, the idea of using my life in that way appealed to me too. And I was confused. I didn't know which side of the fence that I sat on. See, my entire life, I wanted to be a professional football player. That was my dream. I always thought I was going to play in the NFL, and when that dream collapsed and I realized that wasn't happening for me, I realized that I needed to get clarity. I needed to find a place to apply my energy. I need to find a platform to be me. And I didn't know where that platform was. In that conversation on the 3rd floor of Cascadilla Hall on that night was one of my first steps at trying to get that clarity, trying to find out how I fit, how my particular skills, how my particular strengths, which are different than yours and yours are different than mine, fit into doing something, fit into enabling me to create the life that I really want to create. And I remember being just where you are right now, and I remember being totally confused. Not sure if I was in the right major, not sure if I was going to go to graduate school, not sure if I was going to be in nonprofit management or business or a gym teacher. And I know for so many young people, for so many years, confusion has reigned. See, back in the day, there was this young kid who had the opportunity to stand in front of the man who invented the light bulb, Thomas Edison. And he had the opportunity to stand in front of Thomas Edison and get some clarity. Get some clarity about who he was going to be, about what he was going to do. And he decided to use his time with Edison to ask two simple questions. The first is this: Mr. Edison, I have got to know, why did you invent the light bulb? Out of all the things you could have applied so much of your energy and your time, why did you spend so much time, so much of who you are, why did you throw it towards inventing the light bulb? And number two, Mr. Edison, and I love this question even more than the first, how do you thrive? And I love the word thrive, because thriving to me isn't just about having a sustainable job. It's not just about being a good dad or mom or sister or brother. Thriving to me encompasses all of these elements in life, a holistic approach. How do you thrive? And Edison said to the young kid, one simple answer for you. One simple answer that takes care of both your questions. The reason why I invented the light bulb and how I thrive all comes down to asking this question. I find out what the world needs. Look at what the world needs. Look deeply at the needs out there in the world and find out what the world needs the most, and then proceed to invent. And the kid looked at him, he said, I'm confused. What do you mean that statement, that notion should guide me? And Edison said again, he said, open up your eyes to the needs all around you, find them, and then proceed to throw your life, to throw who you are at inventing solutions to those needs. And if we today, right here tonight, have just a little bit of courage, and we think deeply about what the world needs the most, it can have powerful, powerful repercussions on how we can orient ourselves, on how we can point ourselves in the direction of thriving and solving needs at the same time. So just for a moment, let's think about what the world needs. A world of 6.6 billion people, and 1 billion people live under $1 a day. 2 billion people live under $2 a day. 67 million kids all around the world every single day live under cardboard boxes, denied the right to raise their hand in a classroom. This woman works with them almost every single day. Every single day, 3 million people walk the streets infected with malaria, millions of people with AIDS and HIV. 2.5 billion people live in a state called energy poverty, a state without heat or transport or refrigeration of any kind. 1 billion people go to bed hungry every single night. 1 billion people lack access to clean water. But as we open up our eyes, like Edison asked that young boy to do, we know these needs aren't just human things. Because if we really think about the complexity of the needs, we realize they're related to the environment. We realize they're connected to how we treat animals. If we open up our eyes, we see every day 70 million tons of CO2 pollution dumped in the atmosphere like it's a smeltering open sewer, not an atmosphere we should all respect. Every day, if we just think about what scientists are telling us, we'll hear that we're facing something called the sixth extinction, a phenomenon that says by 2050, 50% of all the world's plants and animal species just gone off the face of the earth because of the havoc that we're wreaking on our global environment. And every single day, if we just open up our eyes to it, 70 billion animals live behind the walls of these crazy places called factory farms, all to feed us in unnecessary ways. If we open up our eyes and see with a fine vision what the world needs, then we can begin to think how all of that directly applies to your life tonight, when you go home, tomorrow, the internships you take, the jobs you decide to pursue, the majors you decide to engross your life in, the friends you keep, the professionals you reach out to. See, there's something interesting about all these needs out there. It's almost a paradox, because focusing your life towards solving the world's greatest needs, focusing your energies towards doing that, opens up opportunities for you to thrive. And that is what I learned most importantly in the last 8 years of living this world. Living in Liberia, working with the United Nations, working with the Office of President Clinton, starting my own companies. That solving big needs out there isn't about being a martyr. It's about finding ways for you to be you. It's about living the life that you always imagine yourself living. Because we can see these needs, and I know a lot of my friends do this, and Katie might have friends that do this, and you might have friends that do this. We think and we hear about the needs. We see the stories of prostitution on the streets. We hear the stories of inequality and sadness and AIDS and HIV, and we close our eyes to it. We pretend it doesn't exist in our world, and we go on about our daily life, and for so many years, that was me, that's what I did. Remember, I was just focused on being a professional football player. I didn't know a damn thing about inequality or poverty or AIDS and HIV or little girls on the street. And other people, other friends of mine, you might know people like this, they don't close their eyes to it. They rail against it. They complain and whine, and they call their friends and their family, and they say, woe, it was me. Why is all this happening? But they don't do anything about it. Think about orienting your life around the third choice. Not the choice of apathy, not the choice of whining and complaining, but the choice of thriving. And when I began my journey to see if I could do this, to see if I could find that little magic elixir where my strengths and my passions and the world needs intersected, it began on the streets of Cape Town, South Africa. After I graduated, I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship that sent me to Cape Town. And like Katie, I was really interested in the poorest places, the most destitute people. And it took me to the school called Learn to Live. It's a school in Cape Town, South Africa that is focused very explicitly on one thing: educating street children. So all across the world, in some of the largest cities, Cape Town, South Africa, in Lagos, Nigeria, in Rio in Brazil, kids live on the street. Not homeless adults, but kids. 6, 12, 15, 17 years old. Many of them hopped up on drugs. The drug of choice for the kids in South Africa was shoe glue. They used to go to these shoe stores and buy some shoe glue and tape it to their chest. And when I first got there, I thought it was a little bit odd that all these kids were going like this. I didn't know what was going on. And after I got to know them and I grabbed a few of the shoe glue deals out of their, off their chest, I realized that it was an addiction that was gripping them. And part of the reason they would get so hopped up on shoe glue is it helped to alleviate hunger pangs. Katie works in, I should say, Katie's my friend. We met each other in Monrovia, Liberia, and she started an organization called More Than Me, and she's connected to a lot of elements of the story, so I might bring her in to make it more fun. Katie, the kids in Liberia, are they addicted to a particular drug like shoe glue, or is it all over the place?
Shoe glue?
Shoe glue. That's the kids in South Africa. That was their...
I don't think they're doing shoe glue in Liberia.
What are they doing?
Well, in West Point, I've heard they do heroin, they smoke heroin, but I've never seen it.
You've never seen it?
No.
So these kids, addicted to drugs, living out on the street, it was my job to work with this organization, Learn to Live, and I would go into some of the poorest communities, this township called Khayelitsha in particular, and I would go in there, and it was basically my job to recruit. I would recruit these kids to get out of the township where they lived on the streets and come back to the school, where I was there and some other international students, and they would come back and we would teach them. And we'd teach them basic things like math and history and science, low-level stuff, just to try to give them a little bit of education. And once we would teach them up during the day, unfortunately we didn't have a whole lot of room for them to stay at night, so they unfortunately would end up going back onto the streets at night. But one time in particular, I remember it was my job to teach a course on math, and I'm actually pretty bad at math, which is why we were just having a conversation over at dinner about finding out what you don't like doing. and never doing it. And math is one of those things. I absolutely hate math, and I've tried to avoid math at every turn in life. But I was stuck in this classroom teaching the multiplication tables. So I remember I had this old like rickety chalkboard and this small little piece of chalk. And listen, even though I'm not good at math, like I can teach multiplication tables. Like it's not that hard. So I was up at the chalkboard teaching away 5 times 5, 7 times 5. Here's how you do it. And I got a sense in the classroom that they didn't really know what the hell I was saying. Like they weren't really connecting with the lesson at all. You know, gradually, you know, kids started, you know, doing other things. They were looking around. They were kind of mumbling to each other like, what's this, you know, guy doing? We just don't get it. And then hands started to come up. They were actually cool enough to at least raise their hands. They're like, Josh, they call me Josh. I just don't understand. I'm sorry. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. Sort of a wave of hands. And eventually this young girl in the front row, she was really kind of ticked off that I didn't know how to teach multiplication tables, and she was really raising her hand. And she kept saying, Josh, I'm sorry. I just don't get it. I don't know what to tell you. No one in here gets it. So I was confused. I didn't know what I should do. Should I keep on teaching? Should I sit down? Should I run back to college in the States? So I asked her, you know, what do you think I should do? And she said, let me try. So I did. And I'm going to use you as her. And I gave her the piece of chalk, and she took it, and I sat down, and she stood up. It was kind of interesting, like symbolism. The white American man sits down, and this young black South African girl stands up for education. And she gets up to the chalkboard, and the little girl starts teaching away the multiplication tables. But what I thought was so awesome about it, she wasn't doing the old, crotchety, boring way that I was. She was using these fresh examples from the street and weaving it into the lessons. See, all these kids in Cape Town, all the street kids, they would sleep on this old, dirty, cold train platform. And she was using that train platform as sort of a metaphor in the lesson to better communicate what she was teaching the kids. I just thought it was badass. And to be honest with you, I have no idea if the kids actually understood what she was saying, but at least they weren't interrupting her and they weren't mumbling and they weren't raising their hand. They were kind of transfixed by what she said. So after her lesson was over, I approached her and I said, that was awesome. What's your name? Lauren. How old are you? I'm 12. And I said, well, you talked about this train platform that all the kids sleep on. Is that where you sleep? And she kind of laughed. She was like, please, that's not where I sleep. And I said, where do you sleep, Lauren? Do you sleep with your mom? Do you sleep with your dad, your grandma, your grandpa? Where do you sleep? And she said, nah, my mom, see, she passed away. How? AIDS. What about your dad? Deep breath. Yeah, he passed away too. My grandma, my grandpa. My whole family died, which is why I live on the street. I don't have anywhere to go. But I sure am not going to be sleeping on that train platform. See, what I do, Josh, is I hang out with European tourists. That's just what I do. I said, you hang out with European tourists? What does that mean? She's like, I don't know. You know, lots of Europeans come here. This is one of the hottest vacation spots in the world. They come from all across Western Europe, and they hang out at the bars and the clubs of Cape Town, South Africa. And I said, okay, tell me more. What does it mean to hang out with European tourists? And she said, well, it usually goes like this. See, as they're all pouring out of the clubs and the bars, I just wait for them patiently. I just wait. And eventually they approach me. And they ask me questions just like you asked me. They say, how old are you? 12. And they say, what's your name? Lauren. And then, Josh, they ask me this question. How much are you? And the answer is usually the equivalent of about $5 American. So this young girl who had the audacity to sit my ass down and stand up for education, who had the creativity to integrate these cool lessons into the multiplication table presentation, is being abused and exploited in the most horrific ways by these European men, all because she doesn't want to sleep on that old cold trading platform, all because she wants a little food in her stomach. Now here's where I talk to you, because we can hear stories like that, and a lot of my friends, and like I did for so long, we can pretend that it does not exist as we go about our daily life. We can be totally apathetic to it. And I know that feeling of apathy. I have been Mr. Apathy. Or number two, like a lot of people we know, we can whine about it. We can say, why is this happening? What kind of world do we live in that allows this young girl to be exploited? What kind of world do we live in that a young girl like that is prostituting herself on the street all because her family died of a preventable disease? What kind of world is this? But remember, we're not about whining and we're not about apathy. We're about thriving. We're about finding ways to engage who we are to make her life better. How can we live a sustained and happy life? I'm going to say it. Happy life by helping her. And there's so many ways to do it. You can start your own thing. You can work with organizations like Katie or found an organization like Katie. She started an organization called More Than Me that helps to lift little girls off the street, just like that young girl, and put them into school. You can work with large nonprofit organizations like the Global Campaign for Education. There's a campaign that Nike sponsors called the Girl Effect that brings together a multitude of different organizations, for-profit and nonprofit, to help make lives more enriching and more empowering for young girls. Microfinance institutions like Grameen, like ASEAN International, like Kiva.org. We can find what it is inside us and find ways to use that to make her life better. You're passionate about fashion and you want to help fight the exploitation of women at the same time? Start a fashion company called like Eden, E-D-U-N. A fashion company started by Bono's wife that finds a way to weave women into the supply chain in a sustainable way. There's a for-profit company in New York City called Hello Rewind that was sick and tired of women being trafficked and exploited and thought, how can I use business? How can I use entrepreneurship to make their lives better? They allow you to send your t-shirt in, and then they turn your t-shirt into a laptop slipcover, charge you like $70 for it, and spend 40 of the 70 sponsoring women who have been victims of sex traffic crimes and teach them important business skills so they can become empowered, so they can start their own businesses. Find out what the world needs and then think deeply how it relates to you. So the journey continued. The journey to try to find that clarity. Remember that alignment between who I am and what the world needs the most. And it continued on the streets, not of Cape Town, South Africa, but of Monrovia, Liberia. And I ended up in Monrovia, Liberia, which is the third poorest country on the planet. And how many people have ever seen the movie Blood Diamond here? Lots of people, man. Almost, what do you think, like 80% of people have seen Blood Diamond? It's
In
like,
this room.
no, but I mean, in general.
I don't know.
Blood Diamond gives you a good sort of image of what Liberia is. A place that's just been racked by civil war over the past 2 to 3 decades. You walk around the streets and you see people with amputated legs and amputated arms. You see just bullet holes scarring the walls and huge craters lifted out of the street where tank shells have landed in years past. Again, I said third poorest country on the planet, but an 85% unemployment rate in that country. We have about like an 8.5%, 9% unemployment rate. But the interesting thing about Liberia is it's growing. It's growing about 8% a year, and there's some really positive things happening. And part of my job there was to find a way to make it workable for businesses. So I mentioned there's an 85% unemployment rate. I was lucky enough to get a job with the president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who's just won the Nobel Peace Prize and has the deserved nickname the Iron Lady, to work with her administration to rewrite laws to make it easier and more attractive for certain businesses to leave Europe or leave the States or leave the Middle East and come make Liberia a home. And you can imagine that's a pretty daunting challenge. Because if you're a renewable energy company in Western Europe, or you're making cars in the States, I mean, God, why would you want to come to Monrovia, Liberia, a place that when you close your eyes and really think about it, all you can think about is bloodshed and war and kids hopped up on drugs, holding machine guns, killing other kids. So I did a lot of stuff related to investment incentives. So if you're a renewable, I specialize in renewable energy companies. So if you're a renewable energy company and you leave Europe and you come to Liberia, you get 40% off your corporate tax rate. If you're a company that specializes in some sort of sustainable mode of biofuel and you come to Liberia, you get a 20% tax break. If you employ 1,000 Liberians, you get a 10% tax break. So I was deep in the process of writing and understanding the detailed ways of presenting these laws. Well, one night in particular, I was working on all this stuff at a hotel called Royal Hotel, which is one of the few places in Liberia you can actually access the internet. And I was diligently working away on my computer one night, getting kicked off and on again. It was so frustrating. And I realized that I was about 10 minutes late to meet this girl right here, Katie. We were supposed to meet and talk about this organization she wanted to found, and she has since founded it. And I closed my laptop, and I put it in this bag right here, this bag that I carry around with me every place that I go, which says Nairobi on it from when I was in Kenya. And I put my laptop in the bag, and I jogged out the front doors of Royal Hotel. And Royal Hotel's on the left side of the street, and there's the huge street that separates Royal Hotel from where I had to go is this long street called Sinclair Street. So I went out the front doors, and imagine this is Sinclair Street, going from all the way there, all the way that way. And I started running, and Liberia is crazy. Like, they don't have any traffic lights, there are no street lights, and you really kind of got to duck and dodge as you're running across the street. So I was making it. I was ducking and dodging. I was almost across the street, pitch black, and unfortunately for me, boom, I fell in a hole, which wasn't a good deal for a lot of reasons, mostly because there are cars going like 90 miles per hour either way. Another reason why it wasn't a good deal for me is because, unfortunately, when I fell in the hole, there was this nail protruding from the side of the hole, and when I fell in, it gashed my shin, went in probably like a half an inch, not too deep, but a half an inch is kind of deep, and blood just started splattering everywhere. So here I am, white boy in a hole in Liberia, as cars are going every way, it's dark, no street lights, I got my backpack on me, and blood is just running down my shin into my sock, and I'm thinking, oh God. And before I could even think a second thought, thankfully these two Liberian guys picked me out of the hole and kind of like drug me off the side of the street and pushed me into the grass. And I look down at my leg and I see the blood coming out. I'm thinking, geez, you know, a nail, a dirty iron Liberian nail just stuck me in my shin. You know, I'm going to need to be medevaced out here. The whole idea of finding out what the world needs and then proceeding to event is about to blow up in my life. My friends who are accountants and working at law firms are going to be like, I told you so, you fool. Didn't you see the movie Blood Diamond? What in God's name are you doing? So I called the only person that I knew might have an idea of where to go, you. And I called Katie. And I said, Katie, well, Katie, what did I say? Since it's so odd that I usually tell this story and she's not here. So what did I say when I called you? Do you remember?
I fell in a hole.
I said I fell in a hole, yeah.
Well, I think it's really bad or something. I don't know. Like, I think you wanted to go to the hospital, or you're like, I think I need to go to the hospital. I said, where are you? Mm-hmm. And I came and got you.
Do you remember what hospital you recommended?
I said, I'll take you to the best hospital in the entire country. And I took him to JFK.
So before you say, so when she said, I was really insistent, like, Katie, you know, I just got stuck with this iron Liberian nail. Like, I'm not about to go to some backwards hospital. Like, I need to go to a very clean, you know, international hospital. I'm not about to lose my leg here. Who knows? I might play football again one day. Do not cause me to lose my leg here. So when she said John F. Kennedy Hospital, I'm thinking, nice. You know, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. John F. Kennedy Hospital, this is the place. And she convinced me that it was the place. Remember, you were like really hyping up JFK.
Well, I thought it was the best hospital.
Best.
I've never been to the hospital. I never fell in the hole.
Why do you think it was the best hospital? That's what I want to know. What was it about it that you thought was the best?
Center of the city.
There you go. That's the logic. It was at the center, in the center of the city. Okay. So Katie picked me up and we walk in, and I realized about a millisecond after walking in that if it was the best hospital in the country, then the country's definitely in trouble because it was, I don't know, about, a fifth the size of this room. Maybe? Is that an exaggeration? It was awfully small. It was about the fifth the size of this room, and I walked in. I remember the first thing that happened when we walked in together is the doctor looked down at my leg, and he gave me this kind of, I wouldn't say it's a panicked look, but a concerned look. And like if you walk in a hospital, I live in Los Angeles now, and I walk in like, you know, LA Memorial Hospital, and the doctor looks at my leg and looks at it in kind of a concerned way. Oh, whatever, it's not that big a deal. But when you're in Monrovia, Liberia, a place that has been racked by civil war in the last 2 decades, a place where people walk around with amputated arms and legs and bullet holes are scarring the walls, and the doctor is looking at your leg like he is really concerned. That's when you start to feel the fear. That's when you start to that's when you start to think, what is going on here? And the first thing the doctor said was, remember, supplies.
Oh, we had to go. He told us that we had to go get the medication and the supplies. So I had to leave and go to a pharmacy and come back again.
To get everything.
To get gauze.
To get gauze, to get a needle? Do you get a needle?
We had to get everything. And the needle that he had me get were like these like crochet needles. They were so big. I was
My grandma would have loved these needles.
Wait, but you can tell them what the room looked like.
Well, so you come back. So Katie's going to get the supplies, and here I am, white boy in this tiny little hospital in Monroeville, Liberia, that I thought was a good hospital. That's obviously not a good hospital. Just chilling there on a cot, waiting for her to come back, watching the blood just pour out of my leg. And I remember there was a trash can. I don't know if you remember this trash can, but there was a trash can with like all these bloody paper towels and napkins like pouring out of it. Like there wasn't enough room in the trash can to hold the bloody napkins and the towels. And it was just like they were just aching to get out of this trash can. And all around me, again, this is why Katie was picking up the stuff, I saw, and felt these palpable feelings of people that are literally on the precipice of death. These little girls that look like they're about to die, this young kid who looked like he'd been hit by a motorbike, all of this pain, all of the suffering around me. And because I like asking questions and there was nothing else to do, I started talking to the doctor. And I said, while I'm waiting, can you just tell me what's going on around me? And he said, what do you mean? I said, these people, help me understand what's going on. What's going on with her and him and her. And he said, well, if you have to know, we have about 6 kids over on this side of the room that drank dirty water and are close to dying because there's nothing you can do about drinking dirty water. It's a severe diarrheal disease and we don't have anything to treat it, unfortunately. They can't go pick up anything like you did and we just simply don't have the supplies to treat them. A couple kids that are close to dying because they got bit by a mosquito, and here in Liberia when you get bit by mosquitoes, you don't just scratch or itch like you do in the States. Sometimes you die. A couple young girls over here with AIDS and HIV because they're prostituting themselves on the street. But anyway, it's just another night in John F. Kennedy Hospital. And Katie comes back with the supplies. And I remember I was sitting on the cot and I was trying to be tough because I usually can deal with pain pretty well. Like I usually think, I refocus my mind, I visualize one of these light bulb memories that I was talking to you guys about before. Maybe I dream about getting a dog at that point and I kind of block out all the pain. And I was doing it. I was set as they're about to stitch up my leg. And then, I don't know, Katie, if it was because I saw the needle. I don't know whether it's because I saw your face, but because you were scared. But you remember what happened to my face?
His eyes turned white. Like the pupils around his eyes turned white. His whole face turned white, but everything about him. But I thought he was gonna pass out.
So the doctor, took the needle and his pre-World War II stitching, and just started stitching up my leg, and it was just excruciating. It was excruciating because it was so painful, but I think the emotional sort of deal of it was even more excruciating because I literally thought, I tricked myself into thinking, I am seriously going to lose my leg. This is impossible. My leg is going to be infected. I'm going to get gangrene. I'm going to lose my leg. So thankfully I got out of there and everything was okay. But when I think about my experience with my leg, I think a lot about all those bloody towels and napkins pouring out of the trash can. And I think even more so about those kids who didn't have a Katie with money to run out to the drugstore to get them needles and sutures and what they need in order to keep on living. And I think about those images of those kids, and I think that for so long, when I heard stories like that, when I thought about global health issues all around the world, I would close my eyes to it. I would pretend it doesn't exist. The idea that there are millions of people every single day that simply get on the very precipice of death because they've never had a clean glass of water. The idea that 3 million plus people are infected with malaria, millions with AIDS and HIV, I just pretended it didn't exist. And I think about my friends when they hear stories, when they read articles about these global health crises. Instead of being apathetic like I was, they whine and moan and complain about it. Why doesn't the U.S. do more to support those countries? Why don't I give more? Why don't my friends give more? But remember, for you tonight, today, right now, it's not about apathy and it's not about whining, complaining. It's about thriving, orienting your life around solving those problems in a way that works for you. You love business, entrepreneurship. Found a company, work with a company like Vestergaard, a company in Western Europe that the New York Times said in an article, quote, company profits by saving poor people's lives. They're all about innovating the most cutting-edge health products to deal with diarrheal diseases, to deal with water issues, to deal with malaria issues in the developing world. Whether it's a particular type of insecticide-treated bed net or something called the life straw, they're all about product innovation, design and product innovation to make lives better for the poor. At dinner, we talked a little bit about a company called Jaipur Foot. How many people have heard of them? Got one, two. Jaipur Foot is an organization in India that asked the question, that looked at what the world needed in the region and said, how can we use what we do? How can we use product development, engineering, and creative solutions to make things better for people in India who've lost their legs, who have lost an arm? And they create these very, very cheap prosthetics that even the poorest people in India can buy. We find out what the world needs. And we can work and start with organizations like the Acumen Fund, a social investment fund who focuses on a handful of areas, one, global health, and finds entrepreneurs out there in the developing world who are building businesses focused on solving the global health problems of the poor. We can think about what the world needs and remember that as a woman who founded this organization called the Institute for Health Management said, why is there so much money, so much energy and focus going into solving the problems of the developed world? Why so much money to deal with impotence? What about TB? What about malaria? What about AIDS and HIV? She started an organization that funds research projects that brings in some of the largest companies in the world, Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble, to help focus on the diseases that matter the most to the people in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Remember that pattern. Keep remembering it. I can't say it enough. So the path continued. Remember, it's all about finding that alignment. And recently, I founded a company called Beyond Eggs. And it's an interesting venture, and it focuses on a need that I haven't thought about for a while in my life. It focuses on the plight of animals, specifically the animals that 99% of us eat every single day. And specifically, and I'll show you a picture, it focuses on the egg-laying hen. So every single year in the United States, 79 billion eggs are laid by egg-laying hens in factories just like this one. They're called battery cage facilities. Around the world, close to 1 billion eggs are laid by egg-laying hens just like that. And about 30% of the eggs end up going into the food products that we eat. So when you go to the grocery store and get mayonnaise or cookies, as you know, or Haagen-Dazs ice cream or even Twinkies, and you look on the back, eggs from those hens end up in those food products. So I was talking to my best friend who works with the Humane Society of the United States about 5 months ago about ideas, about for-profit billion-dollar ideas that could end up making a difference in the lives of animals. And he said, why not something that's made of plants that could replace that nonsense? And the idea gripped me. And I was involved in another venture, which I'm still somewhat involved with right now, called 33 Needs. But the idea gripped me. The idea that you could create a billion-dollar business in a way that would help alleviate all this nonsense. This is also really bad for the environment too. That would also end up being a better deal for people's health. Gripped me. And I went on the search to see where the people that could help me put this idea together lives. And I was lucky enough to find this guy, who Katie has met, Chef Dave Anderson. He's a plant-based chef that lives in Southern California. And during the last 7 years, he's actually invented what he calls these plant-based egg substitutes. And this dude is like a creative wizard. He has no structure. He has no business savvy. He finds out what his strengths are, and it's throwing flour all over the place and listening to Mozart. That's what he does. So in the last 5 to 6 months, I surrounded him with professionals, with the guy that used to head the research and development arm for Unilever, one of the largest food companies in the world, with our mutual friend Ian Ross, who a lot of you guys heard about earlier. He's a mathematician savant who can crunch numbers like no one I've ever seen before. And in the last month and a half, we were lucky enough to raise close to $1.5 million from this venture capital firm called Khosla Ventures, which is a very prominent venture capital firm in Silicon Valley, to take this idea and find a way to really bring it to the marketplace, to really find a way to take the idea of a plant-based egg and make it certain so when you go to the grocery store and you buy Twinkies, the more Twinkies that you buy, the better it is for those egg-laying hens in the picture before. So that's me, that's my stories, that's my philosophies, that's my theories, but way more important than all that, I really want to have a conversation with you. And I want to be as detailed as possible. I want to give you names of organizations and names and numbers and email addresses and focus right now on how you can take this idea, finding out what the world needs and thriving at the same time, and apply it tonight when you get home. We can talk about what you should Google, the websites you should go on, the internships you should apply to, ways of starting your own companies maybe, ways of starting your own nonprofit organizations. But most importantly, I don't want you to take all the time that I took. I wasted a lot of time floundering around, and you don't need to waste all that time because you can be you now and solve these problems tonight. So let's open it up for questions, for comments, all phrased around, most importantly, how this applies to you. I'll happily answer questions about my life, but if you ask me a question about my life, I'm going to turn it right back to you and talk to you about how it applies specifically to what you should do tonight, or even right now on your phone to make this happen for you. Let's hit it. What do we got? Questions? Yes, and your name again?
Sebastian.
Sebastian, who is apparel management, design, marketing major. Okay, something like that, some combination.
Do you think there are any unsolvable problems in the world? And if not, what is the hardest problem to solve?
Oh boy, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Unsolvable problems. If I could say one, what would it be? Man. I'm just going through the needs. Global health, environment, animal issues, all the various global health issues, education, income inequality. You know what, I'm gonna say no. No, I don't think there are any unsolvable problems. I think it might have been John F. Kennedy that said, all the problems that we have are created by man. They're all created by man. And because they're created by man, man has the solutions to solve them. And the second question was?
What is the hardest one to solve?
What is the hardest one? Boy, you know, I think the hardest one to solve is right in front of me. That we have a group of ridiculously talented and energetic young people who far too often in the United States and around the world choose a path of a soul-sucking job instead of finding ways to thrive. Because they think a soul-sucking job is the path to get them what they want, whether it's the path to money or the path to prominence or prestige or whatever it is. But the paradox is it's actually the path towards thriving and solving a big need, but it's a difficult thing to wrap your mind around because we're so bombarded with messages that say we should do exactly the opposite. Yeah. What's your name?
My name's Amy O'Shea. I'm a second year at SPIA.
Amy?
Amy.
Amy.
And like a lot of people here, I'm a SPIA student studying environmental science and public affairs.
SPIA is?
School of Public and Environmental Affairs.
Got it.
And a couple of us in here are in a class it's about NGO management, and one thing that we've studied thus far is how aid often fails, which is unfortunate, but sometimes it does. For example, Engineering Without Borders, and how projects sometimes don't get carried out the way that they're intended to. Have you seen any like great examples or
tons.
great things that you would recommend for us to possibly apply to or emulate if we decide
Tons.
to create our own organization?
So I think when I worked with the United Nations in Kenya with an initiative called the Growing Sustainable Business Initiative, and basically I was a venture capitalist. I was an investor that would identify small and medium-sized businesses that were solving social and environmental problems through just being a business. And I was so excited. I thought it was a great job, blah, 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 blah. And my boss, Anna Chilsuck, told me that there's a company, and they were a macadamia like nut producer that employed lots of poor farmers in their production, told me that we need to invest $45,000 into this company. And I said, why? And she gave me the business case for investing in them. And I actually had a site visit where I saw what they were doing. And basically they weren't doing anything. Like, it was a joke. And they don't deserve any money. The guy wasn't there. They weren't producing like they said they were going to do. It was just a joke. And I went back to Anna and I said, Anna, like, we can't invest $45,000 in this company. Like, you know, we are the United Nations. It was the United Nations Development Program. We can't just throw money out the door. And she said, no, Josh, you don't understand, because we are given like $200,000 every quarter by the Norwegian government. And if we don't spend that money, they're going to think, what's going on here? So we actually have to spend it. And there are no more projects we can look at, so we have to get the money out of the door. Otherwise, we're not going to get approved for our next round of funding. And I thought it was insane, like the definition of being ineffective, the definition of insanity. So I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to authorize that. And she said, yes, you will. So I went to the ombudsperson for the UN, and I reported her and reported some other corrupt people at United Nations Development Program Kenya, because that type of practice happened repeatedly. Just spending money to spend money. Looking at projects and realizing that they're total failures, and then rewriting the projects to pretend as if they're a total success. It was really frustrating. And I think the best way to combat against it is just to be radically honest and to be brutal with the truth. I mean, whether you're in a soul-sucking job or a job that actually has meaning, telling the truth and being honest is important. But I think particularly when you're fighting to move the world forward in a positive way, there's even more of a case to be radically honest and not worry about sort of offending people if it means it's in line with the mission. But yeah, I've seen a lot of examples of that. It is frustrating. Thanks for asking. What do you want to do, by the way, when you graduate?
A couple of things. One route would be doing like energy and sustainability for companies, like in consulting.
Cool.
Or doing,
Yeah.
I'm also really interested in international development, like getting renewable energies out to small villages.
Yeah. Have you ever read a book called Capitalism at the Crossroads? It's called Capitalism at the Crossroads. There's a guy named Stu Hart. I would really encourage, if anyone else is interested in the nexus between clean energy and the developing world, read all about Stu Hart and what he's doing. There's also a great little company called Ian Co. Has anyone ever heard of Ian Co? Ian Co is, I'll show you. They're actually one of my, let's see. Ian Co makes clean energy investments in developing countries. So I'll let them pop up, but they're one of a lot of organizations and companies out there that are all about that nexus, clean energy and poverty alleviation. And that's really exciting because you don't always think of those two things going together. How can we support a more sustainable environment, and how can we alleviate poverty? A lot of times they actually conflict with one another. But Ian Co is one of the forerunners in making sure that they're happening at the same time. And there's also, if you're really interested in this stuff, there's an award program called the Ashton Awards that is really, I think, Ashton Clean Energy. No. So there are just tons and tons of organizations on this website. Let's see if I can click on them. No. Ashton Awards. Oh, there's a Wikipedia entry. Nice. So they award these awards to lots of nonprofits and for-profits working in some of the poorest places in the world. They're a great place to look if you want an internship and really want to see what the landscape is in this area. I saw another hand up. Yeah, what's your name? Leslie. Leslie.
I'm sorry, I heard you mention microfinance companies.
Yeah.
And I was wondering your opinion on them.
Yeah.
If you think they work, if we don't know enough yet.
Yeah, I think some do. Like ASEAN International is one of my favorite. I think they're really effective. The ones that I really like are all about metrics and really seeing in a data-driven way how they're having an impact, and ASEAN International does a really good job of that. There's, is anyone else interested in impact investing, that whole field? Handful of people. Have you ever heard of the, it's called, I think it's Genie, hold on. It's called Genie Investment Metrics. Not Genie. It's killing me that I forgot. But they're a great organization that focuses on, that gives investment funds, social impact firms, sort of a template, a way to think about impact metrics. So the microfinance institutions, firms that do that, I think tend to be the most effective. Is that what you're interested in, microfinance?
Not really. I'm
What-
kind of fascinated by them.
What do you want to do?
I'm actually one of Amy's classmates, and
Cool.
I'm a graduate student at SPIA as well.
Cool.
And my concentration though is nonprofit management. So I want to do more consulting, fundraising,
Got it.
strategic planning, things
Got
like
it.
that.
Okay.
I just think that I've heard a lot about, and some of us in here have studied microfinance companies, and there's not a lot of proof that they work, but there's
Yep.
not a lot of evidence against it either. And so I was just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the thought is awesome.
Uh-huh.
It's just if they don't really work.
Yep. Katie knows about this organization very well, MIT Poverty Lab. I encourage everyone, if you're interested in international development, and particularly effective international development, read and learn about the MIT Poverty Lab. So these guys, got sick and tired of stories like I told regarding the United Nations of ineffective development aid. So they went about looking in a very methodical and experimental way, what works and what doesn't. Let's stop guessing. Let's look at it in a really, really data-driven way. And I'll show you their policy lessons in terms of girls' education, which I think is, or student, let me see if they have it here. Healthcare, cost effectiveness. Here we go. Yeah, this is interesting. So they look at all these different interventions when it comes to education. Number one, giving parents information on the higher wages earned by graduates prompted students to attend school more regularly. So simply going to poor households and telling parents that their kids will earn higher wages if they go to school has a ridiculously outsized impact. So that's what they do. A cost effectiveness of aid, what really works. Now you can see, a lot of people think, give out free uniforms. Maybe that's the most effective thing to do. But again, the data says, no, this is actually more effective. So I'm a big fan of their work, and they actually wrote a book recently, and I forgot the name, that really delves deep into this process and how they do it. Yeah.
In terms of changing the socioeconomic climate in third world and developing countries, do you think it's more effective to work within the bureaucracy of the national government there, or be like a freelance entrepreneur, start your own nonprofit?
Yeah.
Which one?
You know what? I think both would be good. I would probably, your personality in a lot of ways dictates it, but I think both can be effective. I think my experience working inside the Liberian government and trying to reform it from the inside out felt pretty effective. It felt like the people around me were open to new ideas and more effective ways of sort of going about things. So I felt like that was effective, and I think kind of going outside, as Katie does, is also effective. So it's so variable depending on the situation. What do you want to do? We're not asking enough questions about what you guys want to do. This is about where you're going to get home tonight, you're going to Google something, how do I get a job? How do I start the thing? What do I Google? Who do I send an email to? I don't get it. Like, I really want to get a job doing this. What are the specific things that I need to do? Wait, are there 3 websites that I need to go on to look at these jobs? Wait, what's the URL again? Is there someone you can tell me to contact to get me a job? Questions like that. Anyway, what do you want to do? That's pretty much it.
International development in South Asia.
In South Asia, right. Gotcha. And specifically
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. Specifically Sri Lanka. And you're a junior?
Yes.
Junior, okay. Are you thinking about an internship this summer?
I am. Actually, through the Harvard Business School, there's a professor there
Awesome.
in international development in South Asia.
Very cool.
So he focuses mainly on India, but
Okay.
I would like to do research on this.
Very cool. So you think you're going to do that this summer? Is it? Very cool. That's awesome. It's a really good platform to go off. I think I saw, yeah, what's up, man? What's your name? Nick? Yeah.
So if you start your own social entrepreneurship, what would you say, how do you make it grow? So you can say you can start it and you can file all the papers and all that, and you can say it's a great idea, but what's the first step of actually taking off?
Who here wants to start their own business? We got a lot of people. All right, this is awesome. Okay. So how to start your own business. So first thing that I would say is, the idea that I think sometimes things are labeled like social enterprises, and sometimes things aren't labeled social enterprises that actually are social enterprises. So even though I like the idea, the name social enterprise and the word social entrepreneurship, you don't always have to think of it in terms of like, I'm starting a social enterprise. You can think of it in terms of like, I'm starting a business that ends up having a positive effect on things. But what should you do? Well, let's use you as a template. Do you have an idea?
Well, I actually have my own.
You have your own business?
Yes.
What does it do?
It's kind of like a knockoff, but I'm trying to go, I actually distribute t-shirts, and every shirt I sell, I give one back to a child in the United States.
Uh-huh.
But I want to change my business model I want to do cardigans, crew necks, jewelry.
Cool.
But what I want to do is take some of the profit and then invest it back into infrastructure where it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if it's needed in Mexico, I know there's a lot of gangs going down there, take some money that we make, and then hopefully we can build something for children, maybe a children's home. Because I'm starting to figure out a lot of children's homes in the United States aren't getting enough funding to stay open.
So you're wondering how to
I'm wondering how to change it, because I have been in newspapers. I'm trying to figure out how to change it without everybody's like, what the hell is this kid doing?
So I think one of the ways is just to change it and see what happens. And less people are probably paying attention than you think. That's one. So I think when we're sort of in it, like, we're in it, we have our mantras and our logos and our way of approaching it, we're assuming that, everyone is watching us. And I think you could probably change it. And the vast majority of your customers, because they have very busy lives and are doing other things, will be like, all right, no worries, let's move on.
So is there like a website or anything like that? Or
that really takes you through the process?
Well, or advice that you can give me, how do you really, I'm in the business school and they all tell us everything, this is how you got to do it to attract customers.
Yeah.
But I tried applying those applications to real life, and they don't really work at all.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out, is there any creative way to basically grab a customer's attention?
Oh, we know a lot. What this is my new favorite thing. This is, this guy, Eric Ries, wrote a book called The Lean Startup. And it's about changing the way that businesses are started. Because he was sick and tired of people having ideas for businesses and spending all of this time strategizing and building up a plan and raising money and recruiting all your friends and your family and building out logos and cute PowerPoint presentations and even a folder and business cards from moo.com. And then in 6 months, you launch to great fanfare, and then, whatever, it kind of peters out after a couple months. And his theory, his process, his methodology is start very, very small. And he uses a word all the time, iterate. So he tells the story of Groupon. A lot of people in here know Groupon. It's actually the second fastest growing company of all time in the United States of America. They make like $850 million a year. I think they just went public. Groupon, when they started, was literally, Andrew Mason, the founder, tells the story. He was like, we didn't know if it was going to work. We started a WordPress blog, said, we're giving away pizzas, here's a coupon for a pizza, and they started selling pizza coupons. And it just started with an ugly looking WordPress site. and then they built from there, and they changed it, and they saw and listened to what customers said, and then they changed it. They decided if they wanted to press on or not, and then once they found a sustainable business model, then they put the pedal to the metal, and then they ran forward. But for people that are interested in starting companies, I highly, highly, highly recommend this book, because it's a very fresh, a very innovative, like more reality-based way of starting companies. And I think it'd do a lot of good for you to look at it, because one of the things that it stresses is experimentation. That you're not sure how to attract customers, well, try 7 different ways. Just experiment. You don't have to choose one way. Try 7 different ways, whether it's taking out Google AdWords, whether it's holding events here at the school, whether it's contacting celebrities and asking them to wear your stuff. Try little different things and see which one seems to have the most traction, and then place your bet on that. Yeah.
I would just like to say we have time for one more question. And I'm also going to put a plug out there for tomorrow morning. Josh is hosting a career visioning workshop. So we can really delve into these conversations more. And if you're interested in coming to that, please come see me after the event, and I can tell you all the details. But it is tomorrow morning at 9:30.
And let me stress for that event, I really, really, really want it to be about, all right, like you leave it and it's okay. These are the next 4 things that I should do in order to start my own thing that ends up making a difference or get a job in this world. Like, these are the places I should go to in the most concrete way. We're going to talk about it, and it might not be as exciting in a lot of ways. I don't know. I'm not going to tell stories about nails going to my shin, but it's very applicable to you in finding out how this can happen for you in your life. So one more question in the back. What's up, bro? What's your name? Marcus.
I'm pretty interested in clean water aspects and also home building, like environmentally sustainable shelter.
Yeah. When you say clean water, you coming at clean water from a for-profit or a non-profit angle?
Hopefully non-profit.
You said non? Non. Why?
I don't know. I just identify with nonprofits.
Okay, cool. Because is anyone else interested in clean water? Is that like a passion for anyone? Meredith, you? Anyone else? Clean water? So there are a lot of opportunities with clean water, both nonprofit and for-profit. Nonprofit, I'm sure you've heard of the organization Charity Water. Have you heard of Marcus, what they're doing? So Charity Water really focuses on building wells in the developing world. There's a project started by a friend of mine, Becky Straw, called the Adventure Project, which uses sort of a more entrepreneurial approach to lending out money and enabling women primarily to build wells and find the tools that they need to make it happen. One of my favorite organizations in the world is an organization in Kenya called Kickstart Water Pump. Let's see, where is this water pump? Water pump products. Moneymaker hip pump. There we go. So they're all about designing really cool products that fit the needs of the poor to enable them to access clean water. So they're one of my favorites. For-profit, Vestergaard, the one that I mentioned, is pretty cool. WaterAid.org is a good organization. But there's so many, and it's a pressing need that needs people like you to focus on it.
What about homes?
The question about homes again was? Yeah. Have you ever heard of Architecture for Humanity?
No.
Great. Started by this guy named Cameron Sinclair. I mean, look at this mission, man. This is all you, Marcus. This is architecture to solve social and environmental problems. That's what he does. He wrote a book about it. I would just, if you're really passionate about this, and anyone else that's passionate about design and architecture and sustainable building, Cameron Sinclair, the guy who started this, is really at the tip of the spear in understanding how this matters. And he started a sister organization called the Open. Actually, let me show you something. Cameron Sinclair. You guys know there's a website called TED.com. There's a lot of cool videos. I go to TED.com and I'd watch Cameron Sinclair's video. He won something called the TED Prize 2 years ago, and he talks about making this vision a reality.
We did a TED series here in May last year.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. I have to get permission from Kelley.
I just wanted to say there's a book called Design for the Real World.
Yeah.
And it's a book all about that. It was written, I think in the 1970s, but it's still very hot.
Design for This is a great book. I mean, a great website. If you're interested, oh, they have it. Wait. Solutions. Same deal here on this site. Design for the other 90%. So these design, product development, interesting, innovative ways to deal with environmental and health and education issues. Cool stuff. All right, let me leave you with this. When you leave here and you're thinking about, what you're going to do, how you're going to arrange your life, what you're going to focus on, as much as possible, please, I'm just pleading with you, avoid the path. Avoid the ridiculous, unfulfilling path of a soul-sucking job. You see all your friends take it. You see your parents may be encouraging you to go for it because it's a secure way to do it. But I'm telling you, through experience, through seeing so many of my friends doing it, that is an apathetic path. That's a path that is not going to lead you to what you really want. It's a path that ultimately is going to leave you very unfulfilled. And the path, ironically, that enables you to have what you really want is a path that finds you focusing on dealing with the poorest girls in the world. The path that finds you dealing with clean energy solutions and being innovative and thinking about products that can affect the poorest of the poor. The path that enables you to say, I'm passionate about architecture. Now let me apply that to doing good. I'm passionate about fashion or apparel design. I'm passionate about marketing or math or technology. How do I apply myself to what the world needs the most and thrive at the same time? I hope you come to that career workshop. And my email address, if you ever need anything at all, if you have any questions about how to really make this happen in your life, is joshua.Tetrick@gmail.com. And Kelley, feel free to send that out everywhere. I would love to answer your questions and be there for you as you go through this process. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it. I'll stick around for questions too.